I'm going to welcome Senator Britt to the stage. Senator.
Yes. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. It's so good to see you.
Great to see you. Look, I brought you something from a small business here in town. So it's called
I never get surprises on
well,
stage.
Well, I hope, okay, so Birmingham and Alabama in general have a great food scene. So everything from like food trucks, to like gourmet dinners, all of the things. And so Alabama, well, of course we love to eat, but these are little baby bites.
Oh my goodness.
So they're each a different flavor. It's just enough. So I'm gonna need to know at the end, after you finish, which one's your actual favorite.
I will definitely take those with me. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Alabama's showing the kindness already.
That's right. We're a hospitable state, right?
Yes. Well, Senator, it's good to see you again and in your home state. We're going to talk a couple of news of the day, and then we're going to go a little bit deeper on what some of the issues you were talking about in your remarks earlier. But I do want to start on a little bit of a hard note.
Okay.
There was a tragic shooting in Georgia.
Yeah.
4 people killed the beginning of school. I mean, it's tragic. And so, you know, there's always questions about what should be done next. We've seen President Biden say it's universal background checks, it's national red flag laws. I mean, it's time to have a universal background check. J.D. Vance has said that school shootings are a fact of life, a tough fact. That's the full quote. But, you know, he talked about hardening the presence at schools. What do you think can be done? Can anything be done?
You know, Anna, first off, my heart is broken for the community in Georgia, the families who lost loved ones, but truly our nation as a whole. The fact that we are even having to talk about this. As a mom, I thought about it this morning when I dropped my children off at school. Yeah. And so you think about where are we as a country and how have we allowed a culture of violence to rise up? And so I think you have to go to root causes of these things, Anna. I think you have to look at where we are. I think we have to look at our values as families. I think, you know, parenting is hard in any day and age. I mean, in any day and age. You add on where we are right now as parents, it's uncharted territory, trying to raise kids with social media and in this climate. And so I think we have to continue to do more, to like get in there, to talk about not only mental health, but values that we have and what we expect. And I think you'll see people continuing to take a comprehensive look at this, but I certainly think it starts around our kitchen tables.
So, but no kind of immediate action in Congress.
I don't, you know, look, here's the problem with Congress, y'all. This is the truth. We have 12 appropriations bills, and I certainly, you know, don't mean to get too political too quickly in this, but Chuck Schumer's not put one of them on the floor. We have an obligation to every single one of you to pass these bills by September 30th. But yet again, we've not done one, not one. Every time that we don't do that, guess what happens? It costs every single one of you more money. When we pass a CR, that means that we like stop all government, like any bidding, anything like that. Anybody in here, any of these business owners know what happens when you go rebid something? Does that price go up or does it go down? It goes up, which means that we are wasting your taxpayer dollars by not just doing our job. So if you want to know any immediate action, if we can't even do what we told you we would do when we got there, and I'm so frustrated with it. So I'm brand new, you know, I'm 20 months into this, but I literally did the work. The last time we passed appropriations bills on time, y'all, was 1997, FY97. And the last time we did them individually was FY95. So your quick math is right. That is 30 years ago. 30 years of Congress kicking the can down the road. We haven't done that. We haven't done NDAA. We haven't done a farm bill. Our farmers are hurting. So if you're asking me if I think something can actually get done right now, I don't see any will outside of like show votes that'll help in politics right now of anything getting done on really any issue.
All right. Ooh, that's a deep sigh here.
There it is.
All right. I wanted to shift gears a bit, though. And I do think taxes are a huge issue. If you're a small business owner, you're a person that pays taxes, it's a hugely important issue. President Trump has talked about it permanently extending and expanding the 2017 tax cuts. He said he wants to make the corporate tax rate for companies that make products in the U.S. He also wants to do huge tariffs. On the opposite side, you have Vice President Harris, who's really has a very different strategy, right? She wants to raise the top tax rate for wealthy taxpayers and corporate taxes, although she won't go as far as Biden has said on increasing the taxes on capital gains as President Biden wants to. What's your view on what Trump and Harris have proposed? And just kind of more broadly, can you Talk about, can the U.S. afford to keep cutting taxes when you think about the deficit and you think about the national debt?
Yeah, so one of the things I think we have to do is kind of sort of take, again, a holistic view of all of this. So you will see the expiration of some of these taxes come up, which means it's time for us to have really tough conversations. To your point that right there about our deficit, we're $35 trillion in debt. $35 trillion in debt. For the very first time ever, we paid more on the service of our debt than we did for our national defense. First time ever. And any country that you see that happen, it's a tipping point of a nation in decline. So that is one of the things you have to think about is we've got to do something about cutting wasteful spending. Here, this is a great group to explain this to because you already get it. The federal government, we don't balance our budget. Can you believe that? Can you imagine if you didn't balance your budget with your small business? What would happen? You wouldn't exist. But yet time and time again, we don't balance our budget. I have a balanced budget amendment. There are multiple different ways that we can do that, but we've definitely got to cut spending. And then we've got to make sure that there's proper return there on tax credits, on the tax structure in general, that we're incentivizing the right thing. I mean, you heard us talk about it a little bit earlier, but making sure things like small businesses can thrive, but looking at, okay, this was the intent, what has the impact been? I know that one of the things that I hope that we look at is the child care tax credits that Senator Kaine and I have come together with. But I do think we've got to have a really tough conversation. And I think you also have to look at what we're spending discretionary versus mandatory. And I think it's time to get in a room and figure out a pathway forward. I'm not sure what that will be, but to your point, there are very different views about how we get there. But I do look forward to being a part of that conversation.
All right, we're going to shift to the topic of the day, small businesses, the state of Alabama. I want to kind of go 100,000 feet to start talking about the economy. Talk about the economy and for small businesses in the state of Alabama.
Right.
Is it going well? Where could there be improvements?
Yes. So our state legislature has done a number of things over the last couple of years to try to take a look at where are small businesses thriving, what are things that we can do, exempting the business privilege tax, raising the threshold that before deductions come on personal property tax interior. They've really taken a look at some of those things. I think that you'll continue to see them focus on that as well. And I would say anybody who's in the audience and you have ideas, take it to your state senator, take it to your state legislature, because they have shown over the last couple of years that they really are interested in trying to figure out a better pathway forward. 99.4% of our businesses in Alabama are small. So it is something that we're really proud of. Small businesses, to me, are the heartbeat of America. They are the backbone of every main street in every community from every corner of our great state. And so trying to figure out how we allow those businesses to thrive is a top priority of mine. Something I've talked about is I'm the daughter of 2 small business owners. And so seeing the hard work of my parents, truly, y'all, early morning, late night, weekends, it knows no bounds. And as I shared with the group earlier, I also saw the real effects of good employers cut their check last and what that means. And so that has been a focus of mine in the U.S. Senate. And that I have looked at, how do we push back on burdensome regulation, knowing that trickle-down effect hits the little guy the hardest. When we're looking at the state of Alabama, we continue to look for ways to help small businesses thrive, and I try to do that through my work on the banking committee. I have a couple of pieces of legislation that I'm hoping become part of a larger package of Senator Tim Scott's, where it looks at small businesses' access to capital and ability to thrive, where I'll continue, we'll have Chairman Gensler in front of us. Again, I'll continue to use those opportunities to push back, whether it's the CFPB or the SEC. I really have been taken back by just how aggressive the rulemaking has been from this administration and how it affects men and women in this room in a detrimental way. So we'll continue to do that. But the business community in Alabama, we have so many incredibly talented, creative, entrepreneurial people, many of whom are in this room, that are willing to risk it all and have that grit and that determination that ultimately is changing communities across the state. And I'm proud to to get to be a small part of that.
So you did fasteners. I grew up on a farm in North Dakota.
Did you?
And let me tell you, it was not a 9-to-5 job.
No.
You started real early, putting up
Right.
bins and combining and all kinds of
Yes,
things.
you're like, it's not even light out.
No.
It's not even light out.
That is right.
That's great.
But I want to talk about this. You mentioned, and John did as well, you served as the Business Council of Alabama president.
Yes.
Before you were in the Senate. Share a bit about that experience, how it informs your perspective when it comes to, you mentioned, access to capital. That's really one of the big hurdles we hear over and over again, and I'll get into some of the stats that Goldman Sachs has found about that as well.
Yeah, no, please do, because I would love to hear them. That's what, when they were talking earlier about the different polling that they do, polling small businesses, I thought, John, I'm going to need a copy of that to kind of hear what are the impediments, what are the things that are actually helping so that we can do more of and or take down roadblocks that are keeping these people from achieving their American dream. But at the Business Council of Alabama, one of my focuses was how do we make sure that we are listening to small and rural businesses, which is why being a part of this today is so special to me. And that was because, 55 out of 67 of our counties in Alabama are rural in nature. And growing up in one of the more rural parts of the state, I just saw sometimes how big businesses had a team of attorneys and a team of accountants and a team of people to help them figure out how to work through something or make it work or be successful. And, small businesses were left doing all of that themselves. You were the accountant, you were the attorney, you were the expert on the regulation that came down. So when I came to the Business Council of Alabama, I wanted to make sure that we were listening to small and rural businesses and trying to figure out what were those impediments and how can we help that thrive. What was access to capital? How do we create a more diverse population within our small business community? All of those things. So I think it was a great experience for me. It allowed me to sit down with business owners across the state and listen. And I think good leaders actually listen. And I think local leaders know best. And so listening to small businesses and then trying to be a force for good with the struggles that were created. And one of the things I'm most proud of was leading the effort to keep Alabama open. Yeah. And so during the pandemic, when small businesses, so many were hanging on by a thread saying, how do we make sure you can keep your doors open, you can keep doing what you love, keep feeding your families, and keep others employed and commerce moving.
So let's get to some of those stats, because I think they're really instructive for this conversation. In the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses survey, the latest survey data showed that 66% of rural small business owners are worried about getting that access to capital for their businesses. What, if anything, is the role of Congress, or from your perch at the Senate Banking Committee, where you think you can kind of prod along maybe regulators, maybe thinking about some of the agencies, things like that?
Yeah, so I absolutely think that we have a role to play. And right now, obviously, being a Senate Republican, we're in the minority. So we don't get to bring bills to the floor. We don't get to decide what bills are marked up. That is what Democrats get to do right this second. And so right now, I have seen my role. I've been creating that legislation and putting it forward, which I want to talk about in just a second. But I've seen my role as pushing back against regulators right now. So if you take just even the SEC, for instance, the SEC, I think, has had 60 rulemakings. 80% of those, have nothing to do with an actual law and or any type of, response to something that's happened in the market. So you see this aggressive rulemaking, but it's not just from them. You see it from CFPB. So taking those opportunities to have that direct interaction with the director and say, do you understand what the trickle-down effect is of this in Red Bay, Alabama? Do you understand that when you say this and you do this and you're asking them to do that, what this really means is this? And so in every interaction I have on the Senate Banking Committee or FDIC or the Fed, you look at Basel III, that's another thing too, like the cumulative impact of all of these regulations, Basel III, long-term debt, et cetera. No one's taking time to stop and think about how does this affect the end user. And so I have taken my seat on the Senate Banking Committee to put that small business hat on to say, this is how it would have affected my dad, or this is how it affects someone in in Opelika. And so pushing back, I see as one of my primary responsibilities, whether it be in a hearing setting, whether it be in letters, getting answers, putting pressure, so that ultimately we can hopefully pull some of these regulations back. And then once we are back in control, which I believe we will be, I believe Republicans will take the Senate, then it's time to get to work. It's time to get to work in undoing these regulations. It's time to get to work in putting these packages of bills forward. I have 2 bills that are being considered to be put in Tim Scott's total package of bills that he's thinking about, that are talking. He was a small business owner himself, so looking at access to capital, getting the SEC to redefine what they consider a small entity, to take a look at that, to take a look at making sure that anything the SBA puts out has a net zero effect on small businesses, right? Because you're seeing all of these things, and ultimately, as it was discussed earlier, as Tim said, as they're saying, someone absorbs this. Either you take the hit or you pass it on to consumers. So we have a number of bills. I think there's about to be maybe a 10, 12 bill package, and I am proud to have a couple of bills that are being considered to be a part of that.
So as I mentioned, we were in North Dakota earlier, we've been in Arkansas, we are now in Alabama, and we've been talking to small business owners over the past several years. And there's some persistent themes of challenges that we hear, kind of universal, that a lot of people face. We're going to talk about childcare, but before we do, I want to talk about recruitment.
Okay.
You know, there's the kind of the flight as people go to school, think about opportunities. What more do you think can be done to try and help rural business owners ensure they have that skilled workforce, or there is opportunities to reskill or attract them to smaller communities?
Yes. So this is one thing that our state legislature has been working on. I actually spoke with our lieutenant governor this morning, and he was saying one of the things that he was most proud of is that they passed the opportunity for a career diploma. And so taking a look at the numbers and knowing that, almost a little bit over half, sorry, I'm getting a little loud here, apologize, of individuals will not be going into a 2-year or a 4-year institution. How do we make sure that these individuals are prepared to enter the workforce and to be able to achieve and have a vibrant life, and career path forward? And so what they did was shift to allow those students to have 2 extra hours a day of actual skilled training, career and skilled training. We also have a great community college system in Alabama. I mean, it is exceptional. And I continue to see places where we are working together to actually achieve the results of the people within communities across the state. And I think that that'll continue. I was just in my hometown of Enterprise, Alabama, and was down there. They were opening breaking ground for a workforce training program there at the college. So I think things like that will make a difference. Alabama is also innovative in that they just changed, and they will have actually a secretary of workforce. And so that person, there will be a 40-person industry board leader of all walks of life that are going and saying, these are the kind of workforce needs that we have, and how do we make sure it's supposed to be, kind of, if you're in Alabama speak, and it was already referenced that it's football season, which are fighting words around here, but kind of sort of like an athletic director, and that can see all of the different places, all the things that are going on, and make sure that there's a cohesive plan forward. So, for instance, taking a look at what community colleges are doing, taking a look at what high schools are doing, taking a look at what the needs of small businesses or manufacturing, and making sure that we are preparing those students for a pathway forward. I think we've got to do more, starting in about 8th grade, of talking to students about what they can do, the training programs they can do, how they can enter the workforce right after high school, and what that means for them, and how they can be prepared to do that. So those conversations you asked earlier about what are happening in Alabama are happening here. And I think the long-term effects of that, once that really becomes entrenched, it's going to be significant.
So we are quickly going to get the hook on this conversation, but I have 2 questions I want to. So I'm gonna get to them because I do want to talk about you've mentioned childcare. It is one of, again, those persistent issues. The recent survey had 74% of rural small business owners reporting that a lack of high quality and affordable childcare hurts their recruitment and retention efforts. It is something that I think universally we all hear about the challenges of of child care. You've been working across the aisle on this. You have a bill. It was introduced with a lot of fanfare. We covered it at Punchbowl News.
Thank you.
But talk about kind of what are the next steps, because introductions, I mean, it's not the first step, because there's probably 6 months and more talking behind the scenes.
Correct.
But what happens next?
All right, so it was one of those things that I thought we've got to do something about this, Anna. I remember, you rewind, my kids are 14 and 15. You rewind, though, I had gone back to law school with essentially, found myself there with a newborn and 11-month-old. So, like, worst idea I've ever had, by the way, number one. But then remember trying to get into the workforce and remember how much it cost. I felt like I was writing a check for my kids to go to college, not for them to go to get child care.
Right.
And so I know how significant that was for our family, and you think about the impediments that occurs. I've had family members that I've had conversations with where they said, I have my dream job, but I cannot afford it. I've now had my second child, and this doesn't make sense. So they're not even given that opportunity to continue to grow and to be engaged in the workforce. So Tim and I sat down, and this is where he really led. One of the things he led on when he was the governor of Virginia was childcare. So it was a natural synergy, a natural conversation, and we wanted to introduce this now, knowing that we are going to have these tough conversations about tax cuts expiring and what do we do about the tax code overall. I mean, those conversations are coming, and we wanted this to be in the midst. We wanted the Finance Committee to be thinking about this, and we thought it was a great way to make sure we were empowering parents. It was something that we believe is sustainable and will allow there to be not only affordability but access. So and one thing that we're really proud of on it is that it helps in underserved communities, because we looked and we thought, where is Head Start, where is Early Head Start, which I'm proud to be a part of, funding those programs through my work on the Appropriations Committee. But when, that's, if you make $25,810, something like that, then after that, then what happens? And how do we help there? So this is the first time that if you don't actually have a tax burden in our bill, you have an opportunity for a tax refund. So trying to help those people that are working to get on their feet, that are working to get back in the workforce. It also empowers employers, it empowers small businesses. So it takes 45F and what was about $150,000 tax credit that was in there. It expands that to $500,000 for large businesses, but it allows small businesses to pool their resources up to $600,000. Because when we saw this, it's like, how can we make this work for mom and pop shops on Main Street, and as Congresswoman Sewell said, in Selma, Alabama, or wherever it is. So we looked at it from that perspective as well, and then we knew that there's an issue when it comes to recruiting people and retaining them, and so we created a pilot program within there that has worked in other states to give states an opportunity to see the effects of being able to recruit and retain workers within the child care community. So we think it is a comprehensive bill that empowers parents, that is sustainable, and that just makes sense.
All right, we one last question here, and I just want to give you the last word, which is you have a bunch of small business owners here. Everyone's excited. There's some people that are starting this program. They're clearly trying to make the economy in Alabama thrive. What's your message to them?
Gosh, we need you. You are the heartbeat of this state. I want to say thank you for taking a risk. I mean, you are literally putting it all on the line. You're doing it in many ways, obviously, to realize a dream you have, but you're providing an incredible service, not only to your community, but you are part of the character and the fabric of who this state is. And I would just say thank you for what you're doing, and keep doing it. And where there are impediments to your growth, where there are impediments to you continuing to be able to create good paying jobs or to reach your full potential, let us know. I mean, we are here to serve you. Let us listen to what those are. Let us see if there is a solution that we can create, and then keep going. And this program is incredible that you get to be a part of, and don't keep it to yourself. what you learn, I believe you have an obligation to pass to others. And so do that, because we know that we have a great state with great people and a great story to tell. And you telling your story to others will only help us elevate that to the nation. I'm a little biased, but I think we're the best.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator. Big round of applause. So good to see you. Thank you for that dessert. I know. I'll let you know. All right. Thank you so much. We'll let you go. I'm going to welcome John Rogers, EVP at Goldman Sachs, as well as we have Maurice Mercer, CEO of Katz, delivered to the stage for a fireside chat. Gentlemen, hi. Welcome. John, so good to see you. Thank you so much for doing this. All right. Well, that is a tough act to follow, but we will do our best. Thank you all so much for joining me here. So I want to start just kind of centering this conversation a little bit of your own stories for those that don't know who you are. I'm going to start with you, Maurice. I was reading about your company. Talk about how you came up with the idea and where it is now.
Sure. I don't know if my mic is on.
Oh,
there we go.
yeah.
All right. So Maurice Mercer here started Katz Delivery back in 2014. It's actually named after my mother, Catherine, who was a nurse here at UAB. She began to develop an autoimmune disease that took her out of the workforce, and we found it a challenge to get her food delivered. And back in that time frame, and even let me back up, in the 2011, 2010 time frame, food delivery, grocery delivery was a faint idea.
Right.
She and I began talking about it, but unfortunately I did not incorporate and start the business till after she passed, and that's where 2014 came.
What a tribute, though.
Yes, thank you.
John, you kind of have spoken to the group, but in your role at Goldman Sachs, talk a little bit about it, kind of your role, I know, in really when 10,000 Small Businesses was just a kernel in the idea phase.
Yeah, well, we began this because, as an institution, we're a wholesale institution. We operate broadly in the capital markets. And our entire thesis, we're a catalyst for other people's results, their superior results, whether they're corporations or foundations or governments that we work with. And at the core of what we're about is putting capital, our capital, others' capital, behind people and ideas. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis, fundamentally. But when you ask yourself, okay, what else can you do to address things, we started to examine, okay, what else can we do by virtue of our expertise and our knowledge? And so what we did is we took our foundation that fundamentally had been operating where we wrote checks and sent them out to different organizations and basically said, okay, that was our citizenship. We did a good job of that. And we decided, no, we could have a bigger impact by marshaling the resources, the knowledge in Goldman Sachs, and repurposing the foundation to solely focus on it, and where we were, in essence, the general contractor. In other words, it's our program, and we can have partners in the program, which we do, and we're dependent on, but we're running this program. And so it's not just writing a check to someone, and I'm not taking away anything from great foundations that give checks to other people that need to do things and empower them. That's an important part of it. And of course, philanthropy in the United States is one of the most remarkable and unique things of our country. It speaks to the character of our people, and it's so refined now, it's incredible. And it's unlike any other country in the world. So this is really a wonderful thing that's done. But we wanted to be much more directly, and so we got involved in this program, came up with the idea. We also learned a lot of things. We learned that we could partner with community colleges. Why community colleges is a center of it? Because they're in the communities, and they're programmed to provide the facilities and the instruction that can go into it. So we built partnerships that were with them, all very successful in getting the program executed. We spent an enormous amount of time on the curriculum, our experience with the curriculum. We had an earlier program that we started, which was 10,000 Women, which was a global, and was about the financial empowerment of women around the world. We developed part of it with Wharton Business School. We took all that knowledge. We went to an incredible entrepreneurial school, Babson College of Massachusetts, whose whole lifeblood is entrepreneurism, and we refined it to the curriculum that we have today. We constantly tweak it, constantly work on it, but we know that to be true to the core success. We also added measurement and evaluation. How do you measure the results? You can't just go and do something. And in Goldman Sachs, I say to everybody who comes to work there, we quantify everything. Every single human activity can be quantified one way or the other, and that's what we drive to. And so in this program, we have to measure that results. We have to, this is a program that we're offering free. We're not charging anybody for it. It's not cheap. It's an expensive program to execute. We have to make sure that that program has results. And heretofore, after 15 years, I can comfortably say that that return, not just the return on our investment of thinking the impact, but we can measure that impact in these businesses.
And it's a long-term investment. I mean, one of the things that I think has been really incredible as we've gone and partnered with Goldman Sachs on this series is seeing the new business owners that are coming to the program, but people that are still as invested, are mentoring and kind of can be evangelists really about how this helped them. Talk about, and then we'll go to you, Maurice, but I want to talk, John, about this rural state investment. It's close to my heart as somebody who comes from North Dakota, but why the decision to do that $100 million in rural communities?
Well, it's like everything in life, we're a product of our own experiential lives, right? So I grew up in a little town in a rural part of New York State. It had 8,000 people. I know about that. I was the paper boy delivering to my client. We're all small businesses, all downtown and small business. I've watched every evolution of that happening on main streets and the effect of big box operations on small towns. So I have very much a sympathy with what it takes in a community. I've also watched big transformations, principally led by technology, but that have had huge, profound effects across our nation. And I find, guess what's holding together that community? Small businesses. They are the only enterprise when big, giant enterprises leave. So I'm personally driven by looking towards that. But what we started to see is we were operating in two basic programs. One was in very large cities, principally in inner cities. There was huge concentrations of businesses within those cities. There was an ability to build off of that core. And then we said, well, wait a minute, there's a whole bunch of America we're not able to reach if we're in those cities. So let's start a national program. Everybody can be nominated into the national program. You can come and serve. You can be in that program in the national. But as we went on with that, we found that still wasn't answering the question. And we found that that was a huge concentration in rural. Now, we just had an example being spoken about here in Alabama. Okay, the nature of states within this union that have huge rural communities that are part of it. Large parts of this country are in that same situation. So he said, wait a minute, we could do this. We could try this experiment. Right. And so that's what started it. We had a project. The plan is 20 states that we're going to concentrate on. We've got a sort of a hub spoke kind of structure to it, but that'll supplement what we're doing in the rest of the program. And by the way, it leads to other things that we find to be beneficial. So I'll give you an example of that. When the current Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, was governor of Rhode Island, yep. She heard about the program. She literally, as governor, stalked me until we came to think about Rhode Island. Well, Rhode Island wasn't in the sort of plan at that point in time, nor was the fact that, we didn't have a statewide program anywhere. We were in these cities, but she kept at it, and she basically made the whole case that, hey, our state's equivalent. It's a tiny state, but it's equivalent to almost one city. We went into that. It was profound, operating on a broader basis. We touched businesses that were in the rural parts of that state. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of the journey we've been on over this time. And we always learn something new, what works, what isn't really working. One of the things I said at the outset of my remarks about you need to be wanted in a community. I went to one major city in the United States, met with the mayor, and basically said, no, I'm not interested in that program. We're building soccer fields. And I said, Mayor, I'm not in the soccer field business. We're not doing that. So we didn't do it. We didn't do anything there.
Right.
Guess what? That mayor was out, another mayor came in, and they were stalking us about, please come and do this program, and we did. So it's a matter of, we measure this, and if the program's not working, if these elected officials are not supportive, if they're not listening to this, we're not doing it.
Yeah. Maurice, I'm going to turn to you. Senator Britt we talked about a lot of issues that small business owners face: childcare, training, access to capital. You've been a small business owner since 2014. Talk about what you've seen in your role.
Sure. I think most small business owners right now are feeling the effects of the economy.
Yeah.
When we look at access to capital, rising interest rates, and small business owners like myself, we don't want a handout. We want an opportunity. That opportunity to gain access to the capital, to be able to grow our business, to be able to compete with other businesses across the country to be successful. In addition to access to capital, the workforce development is crucial.
Yeah.
We see investments in workforce development in some of our K-12s, where identifying students who are not going to college then, but I think it's going to be important for Congress to create programs for people outside of college, outside of graduation of high school. I mean, when businesses in Alabama currently, or in this Birmingham metro, we're at 3% unemployment, and just further south, 1.9%. So we're all looking for that same 3%. And we need the workforce development partnering with the community colleges as well for the ones who did not identify trade in high school. After that'll help them to elevate, help us to find and identify workers who want to work and who want to provide for their families.
Because so much of that is also kind of teaching them how to be adults, right? I mean, they're coming just out of high school, you know. I mean, that's part of it. It's, yes, how to do the job, but then it's also all the other kind of soft skills.
Correct.
Talk about Goldman Sachs, 10,000 small businesses. Why do programs like this matter for people like you?
I think this program matters to businesses. For number one, it allows, we've heard the term loosely of an MBA, but it allows us to refocus on our business, identify through a SWOT analysis to see what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then work with like-minded individuals. It's one thing for me to talk to my spouse or talk to a good friend, but if I can talk to a classmate, talk to an alumni who's been through similar program as well as similar effects within their business, then we can collaborate and work together to grow. So I'm proud to be an alumni of 10,000 Small Businesses. And as mentioned earlier, there are tons of surveys, and I appreciate every one of them. Let me just say that. I love the surveys. But that helps us to stay connected and helps the program to continue to redevelop itself and make sure that they're meeting our needs as well. So it's a great holistic system that I think that's been created, and certainly I'm glad to see the new class come in and as we continue to grow.
Yes, I feel like what's so interesting that when the surveys, then the data and how it shifts or how it changes is also you really see the kind of the heartbeat of the small business. John, talk about that. I've thrown about a lot of numbers, today in terms of the child care challenges, in terms of access to capital. You just have a recent survey out. Top line, one or two things that stood out to you.
Well, what I find always is what's common among all small business, whether rural or anything. And even in this survey we most recently did, the percentages are a little more profound, but they're not that dramatically profound relative to what is being found among all small businesses. Right. Things that exist in our country, regulations that come in, change in healthcare policy, they are profound in small businesses. And the things that any broad employer would find, which is always about talent, the management of talent, much more profound in small businesses. And therefore, what are the ways to make that easier? What are the ways to give those the benefits of that kind of thing? And what we hope to do from the surveying is to become, and we've tried to do this we were talking about this earlier, to be more of an advocate for small businesses. That's why we've led this effort to get the SBA reauthorized. You know, it's unbelievable that that hasn't been done. So the things that stand out to me are the shortage of talent, finding the right talent. I also think what's going to grow is the effects of technology, and those are good effects and bad effects, meaning that all of a sudden you become part of some kind of scam situation that's only enhanced by technological capabilities. And you don't have, you know, a cyber command center in your small businesses. So we're thinking more about that. We've spoken a lot today about childcare. You know, the fortunate thing from my perspective, I've been part of a firm that I've been there for 30 years, and 32 years ago, this firm started, emergency child care services so that if anything broke down, people could bring their child into our work. It's been a cornerstone and an essential part of our business. And so I think that's a huge thing. We're involved, as I've said, in 10,000 women, and we have our program, 1 million black women. We're focused on these things. Guess what? Those are real things about when people who want to re-enter the workforce, and we're trying to look at that as well. So those are the things that probably would stand out the most for me.
We are quickly going to run out of time, but how I often like to end these conversations is, and I think it's important because we do have people on the live stream in Washington, advocates, lawmakers, their staff who watch these conversations who aren't actually just in the room here today. But I'll go with you, Maurice, and then I'll give you the last word, John. What's the one thing you hope those people take away from this conversation?
I think the most important thing they should take away is a streamlined access. To capital, that is. When we went through the PPP program, the access was very streamlined. Small business owners sometimes wear multiple hats, and they may not have come through a 10,000 small business program. And so creating a way that these business owners can gain that access, I think would be fundamental.
Great.
Yeah, I think my own view is about, and I spoke about this earlier, is confidence. Have confidence in yourself. At the end of the day, that's what's got you here at this stage of the game. It's going to get you through the journey. I'll tell you personally, as I look at all of you and I think about your small businesses, and I told you that I grew up with it, well, let me tell you, when I think about the decisions you have to make, meeting a payroll and things like that, my stomach is in a knot. Okay, I make decisions in my professional life every day that are profound impact. They're huge in terms of their consequences and the contribution. But when I think about what faces that, what I saw my father and my mother doing every single day, I'm in knots over that. So I have nothing but the most profound respect for what you're undertaking.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you both so much for joining me on stage today. A big thank you to Senator Britt and her team for joining us, and to Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses for their ongoing partnership on making conversations that are so important like these possible. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.
All right.